Psycho 1960 was a movie that terrified people in 1960 and completely changed Hollywood forever. Everyone remembers the shower scene, the spooky Bates Motel, and Norman Bates with his mother. But what most people don't know is that the story behind the movie is even stranger than the movie itself. We've found 20 weird facts about Psycho, plus one bonus fact so shocking that Hitchcock himself tried to bury it from the public. You'll want to stay until the very end for that one, because it's the kind of truth that makes you see the movie in a completely new way. Let's start. 1. Hitchcock bought the book Psycho in secret. The story came from writer Robert Bloch, who based parts of it on real-life murderer Ed Gein. Hitchcock was so worried people would read the book and spoil the twist that he sent assistants all over the country to buy up every copy they could find. By the time filming started, it was nearly impossible for anyone to find the novel in stores. This meant almost no one in the audience knew what was coming. It was one of the earliest examples of a director controlling spoilers before the internet even existed. Hitchcock wanted Psycho to be a complete surprise, and it worked. 2. The shower scene showed no real nudity, but people swore they saw everything. Hitchcock shot it over 7 long days, using more than 70 different camera setups. He kept the camera moving fast, cutting between skin, the knife, and running water. Your brain filled in the missing pieces, which made the murder feel more brutal than it really was. No blade ever touched Janet Leigh, but audiences screamed and fainted, convinced they had seen more than they did. This trick editing became one of the most famous lessons in film history, proving imagination can be scarier than reality. 3. The blood in the shower wasn't blood at all. It was chocolate syrup. Hitchcock shot Psycho in black and white, even though color films were common by then. Fake movie blood didn't look right on camera, but Hershey's syrup was thick, shiny, and perfect for the black and white effect. When it swirled down the drain, it looked disturbingly real. The smell was also intense, filling the bathroom set with the scent of chocolate during filming. Viewers were horrified by what they thought was real gore, never knowing they were really watching dessert topping drip into the drain. 4. The sound of stabbing wasn't made with a knife. Hitchcock knew sound could trick people as much as visuals. To get the effect of a blade cutting into flesh, his sound team tried dozens of ideas until they found the perfect one: stabbing a melon. They sliced different kinds of fruit until Hitchcock finally said, "Yes, that's it." The melon's squishy, tearing sound was disturbing enough to convince audiences the knife was really going in. The genius here was simple. No violence happened on camera, but the sound made everyone believe it. 5. Janet Leigh never took showers the same way again. She later admitted that filming the famous scene left her permanently nervous about bathrooms. Even though she knew it was just a movie, the memory of standing in that set, with dozens of camera angles watching her pretend to die, stayed with her forever. She confessed in interviews that she began taking baths instead, and if she had to shower, she would always leave the curtain partly open. She also checked that the bathroom door was locked every time. Imagine starring in one of the most famous movie scenes ever, and then being scared of repeating it in real life. 6. Hitchcock made theaters lock their doors. At that time, people were used to walking into movies at any point, catching the middle first and watching until the start came back around. Hitchcock wanted Psycho to be different. He told theaters that no one would be allowed in once the movie had started. He even sent out posters of himself pointing at his watch, telling people to be on time. This was unheard of in 1960. It made the experience feel special, and it kept the big twists safe from late arrivals. Audiences lined up outside, knowing if they missed the start, they'd be turned away. 7. Anthony Perkins, who played Norman Bates, was only paid $40,000 for the role. This was actually a pretty small paycheck, even back then compared to other Hollywood stars. But the role ended up defining his whole career. Perkins played Norman so perfectly that audiences couldn't separate him from the character. For years, he struggled to get other types of work because directors always pictured him as the creepy motel manager. In a strange way, Psycho made him both a legend and a prisoner of one role. Perkins later admitted he was proud of the film, but he also wished he hadn't been so typecast. One movie changed his life forever, in both good and bad ways. 8. The studio didn't want Hitchcock to make Psycho. Paramount Pictures hated the story and thought it was too disturbing. They told him it would be a failure and refused to give him his usual big budget. But Hitchcock believed in it so strongly, he made a shocking choice. He financed the film himself. To save money, he used his TV crew from his show Alfred Hitchcock Presents instead of a regular movie crew. He even filmed in black and white, not for style at first, but because it was cheaper. Hitchcock gambled his own money and reputation, and that gamble paid off big, turning Psycho into one of the most profitable movies of his entire career. 9. The advertising campaign for Psycho was one of the strangest in movie history. Hitchcock released trailers that barely showed the movie at all. Instead, he appeared on camera, walking through the Bates Motel, giving creepy hints about what was going to happen inside. He didn't spoil anything, but he teased just enough to make people curious. This kind of marketing was completely new at the time. Normally, trailers showed the best scenes. Hitchcock flipped the rules. By keeping everything secret, he made Psycho feel like a mystery people had to solve by buying a ticket. 10. Vera Miles, who played Marion's sister, was originally Hitchcock's first choice for another movie, Vertigo, but she got pregnant and had to drop out, which disappointed Hitchcock greatly. When Psycho came around, he cast her again, but his feelings toward her were complicated because he once saw her as the actress who ruined one of his earlier plans. This behind-the-scenes tension added to the cold, serious energy she brought to her role. Many film historians think Hitchcock's obsession with blonde actresses and his controlling behavior played into how he directed Vera on set. It's one of those odd little connections between Hitchcock's personal life and his movies. 11. The movie almost didn't have its famous music. Composer Bernard Herrmann wrote the terrifying screeching strings for the shower scene. But Hitchcock at first wanted the scene to play in total silence. Herrmann ignored him and created the music anyway. When Hitchcock finally heard it with the stabbing violins, he instantly changed his mind. That chilling re-re-re sound became one of the most recognizable pieces of music in movie history. Hitchcock even admitted later that at least 1/3 of the movie's power came from Herrmann's score. Without it, the shower scene might not have been nearly as scary. 12. When Psycho was released, critics hated it. Major newspapers called it cheap, disgusting, and even trashy. Some reviewers said Hitchcock had finally lost his touch, but audiences felt the opposite. They lined up in huge crowds, screaming and fainting in theaters. Within weeks, the critics changed their tune, realizing they were wrong. Psycho became a massive hit and was nominated for 4 Academy Awards, including Best Director. What started as a movie people thought was too nasty ended up becoming one of the most studied films in history. It proved the audience was way ahead of the critics' 13. Hitchcock had one strict rule for Psycho. No one was allowed into the theater after the movie started. At that time, people often walked into movies halfway through, watched until the end, and then stayed to catch the beginning later. Hitchcock hated that idea. He knew if someone walked in late, they'd be totally confused, especially because Marion Crane, who seemed like the main star, dies so early. So he told theaters they must lock the doors once the film began. Posters even showed Hitchcock pointing to his watch, warning people to arrive on time. This rule created a new kind of movie experience, people waiting in long lines, excited and nervous to see what secrets were inside. It turned watching Psycho into an event, not just a casual film. 14. Janet Leigh, who played Marion, was traumatized by filming the shower scene, even though she knew the knife never touched her and the blood was only chocolate syrup. The experience of screaming and pretending to be murdered again and again for a whole week left a mark. After Psycho came out, Leigh admitted she could never take normal showers again. For the rest of her life, she only took baths. She said every time she stood under running water, she imagined someone pulling back the curtain with a knife. The movie didn't just scare the audience, it permanently scared its own star. 15. The famous shower drain shot was a genius trick. The camera shows blood swirling down the drain, then slowly fades into a close-up of Marion's lifeless eye. This transition looked smooth, but it was very difficult to do in 1960. The crew had to carefully line up the camera so the circle of the drain matched the circle of her pupil. The effect made audiences feel like they were being pulled into Marion's death, as if the life was draining out of her body. It was such a clever piece of editing that even modern filmmakers study it today. Something so simple ended up being one of the most chilling shots in cinema history. 16. Censors tried to ban the shower scene. At that time, Hollywood rules were very strict. Nudity, blood, or even a toilet flushing could be considered offensive. When Hitchcock first showed the shower sequence to the censors, they told him it was too shocking, and he must cut it. But Hitchcock didn't change a single frame. Instead, he resubmitted the exact same scene, pretending it was a new version. Strangely, the censors approved it the second time. Many believe they didn't want to admit they were wrong the first time. Hitchcock basically tricked the system, and that's how one of the most famous scenes in movie history survived. 17. The first flushing toilet ever shown in an American movie was in Psycho. Before this, Hollywood considered it too inappropriate to show a bathroom in detail. But Hitchcock wanted Marion to rip up her note, flush it down the toilet, and make it look natural. It seems like a small detail, but at the time, it shocked audiences. Some even complained more about the toilet than about the murder. Today it feels funny, but back in 1960 it was actually groundbreaking. Hitchcock managed to break a silly old rule, and now it's hard to imagine movies without bathrooms. 18. Hitchcock used TV-style filming tricks to make Psycho scarier. Because he was saving money, he shot it like his television series, with smaller cameras, faster setups, and tighter shots. This gave the film a raw, realistic look. Audiences weren't used to horror feeling so close and personal. Most big Hollywood films looked polished and glamorous. Psycho looked dirty, simple, and more like real life. That made the violence and fear hit even harder. Hitchcock turned budget limits into a strength, creating a whole new style of horror filmmaking. 19. Anthony Perkins, who played Norman Bates, became forever tied to the role. He gave such a convincing performance that many people thought he was actually creepy in real life. Perkins admitted it was hard to get new roles after Psycho because directors only saw him as the crazy motel guy. But here's the twist. Perkins was nothing like Norman. Off-screen, he was soft-spoken, polite, and even shy. He often said that Hitchcock's direction helped him bring out Norman's sweet but twisted personality. Ironically, the role that made him famous also trapped him. For the rest of his career, he carried the shadow of Norman Bates everywhere. 20. The ending shocked audiences so much, many theaters reported fainting and screaming. The big reveal, Norman dressed as his mother with a crazed look on his face, was unlike anything viewers had seen before. Some people were so disturbed they couldn't sleep for days. Hitchcock also added one final touch, the psychiatrist explaining Norman's split personality. This scene helped audiences understand the shocking twist, but Hitchcock also used it to calm the crowd before sending them home. Still, people left the theater shaken, talking about it non-stop. It wasn't just a movie ending, it was a cultural earthquake. Bonus fact, the wildest one. Hitchcock wanted total secrecy, so he came up with an extreme plan. He bought the silence of everyone working on the movie. The cast and crew were not allowed to talk about the story, not even with their families. Hitchcock even refused to give the actors the full script. They only got the pages for their own scenes. And here's the craziest part. When Janet Leigh's death scene was filmed, Hitchcock told no one except a few key crew members. Even Anthony Perkins wasn't on set that day, so his shocked reaction later was real. This level of secrecy was unheard of in Hollywood. Hitchcock basically turned his entire crew into co-conspirators, guarding the movie like a hidden treasure. That's why the surprise twist worked so perfectly. No one outside the set had a clue. And that's it. 20 weird facts and one bonus secret about Psycho. From chocolate syrup blood, to toilets breaking rules, to Hitchcock's obsession with secrecy, this film changed the history of horror forever. Even more than 60 years later, it still shocks new viewers, proving that true fear never goes out of style. So the next time you hear a shower running, maybe, just maybe, you'll think of Norman Bates waiting on the other side of that curtain.